Hello, and welcome to my TED Talk. So this is a video about making a character in Blender. This is not a tutorial, however. Um, to be honest, you should not even be taking my advice, really. This is mostly meant for entertainment. But that being said, I will be trying to teach you how to do this, right? My goal is to make this as educational as I can with my limited knowledge and skills. So if that sounds good to you, stick around. Before we start, I would actually like to show you some, or I guess one model that I've made, so you know kind of what to expect, what kind of output we're going to be getting from this series. By the way, this series I want to cover more or less the whole process of making a character. So starting from modeling, rigging, materials, texturing, whatever you can think of. So that's what the plan is. Okay, so now let me show you this character that I've made. So here it is, the pinnacle of creation. Well, not really. This model actually kind of sucks, but I do think it's at least half decent. Like, especially if you're a beginner, I think you would be more than happy to make something like this. Um, this is a anime shaded or a cell shaded model. We will not be making a cell shaded model this time because, as you can see, this one has a lot of problems. And to be honest, I don't really know how to do a cell shaded model properly. Certainly not to the degree that I would need to actually teach, or I guess make an edutainment video on it. So yeah, I guess you could get a rough idea of my skill level from this. But anyway, let's take a look at what model we will actually be making by first looking at a reference of the suspect. So here we have a picture that I've drawn previously, and we're actually going to be making the girl on the left. She is one of my original characters that I would like to, and I would like to have a model of her to maybe do some animations. I will be posting more about that in the future if and when I get to it. But anyway, now that we know who we're making, let's talk a little bit in general about modeling. So like I said, this is not a tutorial, but I would briefly like to mention a few things. So the first thing I would like to mention is, what is this model going to be used for? This is a question that you should be asking yourself. And for us, the answer is it's going to be used mostly for animation. So we're going to be making a model that has good deformations, or is built with topology that has deformations in mind, that is meant to be seen from multiple angles, that's not too heavy, so we can actually render it within our lifetime. So another thing I want to ask is, what kind of style are we going for? So are we going for a cel shaded character? Are we going for a photorealistic character? Something in between? This is something that we should keep in mind as we model. And for me, I want a semi-realistic character, so not too realistic. We're not going to be modeling the pores on the character's face, but we'll see how far we want to push the realism once we get to materials. But that's the broad goal. That's the art direction, shall we say. And also, it's a consideration when we model the topology, the style we're going for, because as you might already know, when you're making a cel shaded character properly at least, and not just slapping a color ramp on a diffuse shader, you actually need to have proper topology to support that style. So yeah, we're not going to be going into that because I don't know how to do it, frankly. But if you want to do that, then you have to look for resources to figure out how to do it properly. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Okay, one last thing before we get started. So I realize now that you may be a beginner watching this, and some of the stuff I'm saying may be going over your head. So I would also like to point out that if you are looking for a tutorial, then I will be pointing out a lot of the resources that helped me learn. It hasn't actually been that long since I've started 3D modeling. So honestly, if you like what you see here, then you know that it can be very achievable to get to where I am, right? You don't need to be an art god to get something that you like. You don't need to know how to draw in 2D. You don't need to have talent. None of these things, right? So you just have to work at it, and before you know it, you'll be a pro. Well, maybe not a pro, but you'll be confident enough and competent enough to actually make something that you enjoy, right? So, and that's the goal really for a hobbyist at least. I'm assuming you're a hobbyist because this is if you're a professional, then you should really not be watching this, man. What are you doing? All right, after the longest intro of all time, it's finally time to get started. So what is the actual goal for this video? Well, I would like to get the head of the character made in this video. Just that. So this might seem like a small goal to set. It's actually a pretty involved process, I would say. The head is one of the more complicated parts of the body, but I think we can do it. And I might have to speed up a couple of parts to actually get through it in a timely fashion, but I hope to show you at least the main parts. All right, here we go. So there are multiple ways of modeling the head, multiple strategies. I guess the most basic one would be to like sculpt a high poly head and then retopologize, which you might have to do depending on the art style. But in this case, since we're going for anime, I think it would be best if we uh, went for a sort of freestyle approach. This is actually the method I also used in the model that I showed you. So let me show you what I mean. We will do this in steps so that it's easier for me to explain and also easier for you to follow probably. So the first step is that we want to make an outline of the face. So let's do that really quickly. So snap to front view on the y-axis. That's important. Go into the cube, merge everything at center. Let's set up a mirror modifier. And now let's make the outline of the face looking from the front. So let me do that real quick. You can spend more time on this than me, but I'm just going quick here. We can adjust this later, of course. Okay, and now we've gotten to the top. Here we want to set up clipping so that we can't extend to the other side. There, we have our basic outline. Okay, for the second step, we want to block out the eye and the mouth. So these are the most important features looking from the front. So let's do that. All right, so copy a vertex. Turn off clipping momentarily if you copy the middle one like me. Turn it back on, okay. And let's make the eye and the mouth. So it's a good idea to have the same amount of spans or vertices on the bottom and the top. This helps it be more consistent when you animate. So keep that in mind. Here you should probably spend more time than me because this is kind of important to get the shape correct for the eye especially. And let's do the mouth as well. Okay, the next step is a bit of a tricky one. So we want to use the proportional editing tool from the side view to give the vertices their correct position three-dimensionally. I'll show you what I mean. So because we snapped to the y-axis when we started modeling, all of our vertices have the same y location. So you'll notice that once I rotate the view, right, like this. So what we want to do is fix that right now. So select all the vertices above the jaw and bring them all back. So I just held control there and I was able to select all the vertices by selecting the shortest path between them. Okay, now turn on proportional editing and take them back and adjust the proportional editing fall off. And you'll see that also drags the eyes, which we may not want actually because we want to do the eyes separately. So turn on connected only and try again. And we want to maybe want to try a different shape here. So let's try sphere. That seems about right, at least for a first pass. And we can snap to the X view to see our handiwork. Okay. And that looks about right for the first pass. Okay, so next we want to do the same thing for the eyes and the mouth. By the way, you don't have to do all the editing in proportional editing mode. You can just turn it off and move one vertex at a time. We have such a low number of vertices that it's actually quite efficient to do so. Okay, once we're happy with the shape of the eyes, let's pull them back, because as we know, the eyes are in the eye socket, which is an indentation in the face. Okay, and for the next step, we want to outline the side of the face. So just like we did in step 1. So make sure you snap to X before you begin, just like we snapped to Y in the beginning. And don't be afraid to take your time, because this is important to get this right. I mean, it'll save you time later. I'm going to spend some time adjusting the proportions now because they're looking kind of scuffed. By the way, make sure that you use like the least number of vertices that you can get away with here at this stage, because we really want to keep the model light. It'll make it easier to model. We can always add detail later. Keep that in mind. For the next step, we want to model the lips and the eyelids. In practice, we're just going to extrude the eye and lip shape that we just made. I usually go for 3 loops for the lips and 2 loops for the eyelids. Okay, now at this point, I think we need to talk about the nose. So I think this is a potential point of departure. So some people will do things differently here. The main question is, since we're going for an anime style, are we actually going to model the nostrils or not? This is going to change our topology, obviously. In my case, I usually model the nostrils, but you might not want nostrils for your character. So depending on what your needs are, do as you see fit. I'm going to model the nostrils though. So let's see if we can do that. So I should probably explain a little bit what my thought process is here. So the first thing that I'm thinking about is I want a loop that encircles the area of detail. So in this case, the nose. This helps keep the detail contained in the mesh, so we don't have like detail where we don't need it. It's just a nice way of working. And you'll see me use this process whenever we want to build details into our model. And the second thing I'm thinking about is I want to capture the planes of the nose that I actually want to be represented in my model. So what do I mean by that? So if you think about the nose, there's more or less 4 masses to the nose, right? So there's the tip, there's the 2 nostrils, which are like a bulbous shape, and then there's the like the flange that comes down. I think it's called the septum. There are other areas you could think about as well, such as the nose bone, if your character has a pronounced nose bone, and the area where the cheek muscles meet the nostril. This is useful for some expressions. But what topology you want for your model really depends on what your needs are, right? What the realism level is, and what kind of expressions, what kind of like uh, feel are you going for? So in our case, since we're going for an anime style, we probably don't want like too many surface details. But anyway, with that said, let's get to the hard part. So now we want to start merging some of these areas that we've built. So how are we going to do that? Well, this is actually the main thing that I have to teach you in this video, which is you want to keep the detail as low as possible. So to the point of absurdity, keep the loops low. As long as it has the correct topology, you don't need any more detail, right? So once we're done with the basic topology blocking, we're going to add detail and we're going to go into sculpt mode, and then we're going to actually finalize the shape of the face. So it's really going to save you a lot of time and a lot of headache if you just keep things light. So at this point, you might be asking yourself, what do I actually mean by correct topology? And this is an involved subject that I'm not an expert on. So I'm actually going to point you to a video by Dicko that goes into quite a bit of detail explaining what good facial topology is and why it is like that. That being said, I'm going to do things a little bit differently than Dicko. I'm going to use my own understanding of topology to make a facial topology that I'm comfortable with. This is probably not advice, but this is how I usually do it. I don't really like following guides, to be honest. I like doing my own thing and learning. So that's my own cross to bear. But whatever facial topology you have, the basic puzzle of facial topology is you have these loops in the face and you want to find a way to connect them that actually makes sense, right? So whatever you do, this is the puzzle that you're solving. So let me show you my solution. All right, so I'm going to speed through this a little bit. It took me about 15 minutes to get this, but I didn't actually get it correct the first time. And I had to do a little bit of fixing as I went. So I'm struggling a little bit to explain what's actually happening in this clip, but the basic idea is that I'm trying to merge these loops of the mouth, the eyes, and the nose, as I explained, with the loop that goes around the outline of the face, and I'm creating geometry to facilitate that. So, for example, you'll see me use the knife tool to create an extra loop on the symmetry line, on the nose, because I needed that geometry there. And keep in mind, if you're not happy with the loops, this is the time to change them, right? So um, as you see, in some cases that I changed my mind as to how I wanted the loops to go. So for example, um, one typical loop structure that you see is there's a loop going across the eyebrows, then under and around the eye, and then over the bridge of the nose. And I didn't have that in my initial block out of the topology, but then I went back with the knife tool and I created that loop. It's a little bit up to personal preference what kind of loops you want to create in your face, but one thing that can help guide you in this process is to think about what kind of deformations you expect your mesh to have to perform. So you want your loops, generally speaking, to either be tangent or perpendicular to the deformation. If it's diagonal, then that's going to give you some really bad artifacts. The other thing you want to think about is you want the loops to flow with the detail. So that's why we're making loops. Well, that's one of the reasons we're making loops wherever the detail is. Because if we decide that we want more detail in that area, then it's really easy to add it just by adding loop cuts. And the third way to think about the loops is to think about them sort of like isosurfaces. So kind of surfaces that should be deforming together should be in the same loop. So you'll see this when we get to the shoulder, for example, where we're going to have a loop that goes from the shoulder to the chest, because when you raise your shoulder, your chest actually raises up as well. That's something you might not think about, but it's true. So anyway, I hope this was at least a little bit helpful. If not, then the video I linked by Deco should have you covered. So yeah, you'll see as I get more and more happy with the design, I'm adding a little bit more detail just to have enough to actually sculpt the shape of the face once we go to sculpting mode. By the way, one thing I realized is that if you're learning this stuff for the first time, one thing you probably have trouble with a little bit is actually managing the edge flow to make sure that it goes where you want it to go, adding loops uh, without them actually spreading out to the rest of your mesh, things like that. So I'm going to link a video on that subject as well. I think it'll help you. So anyway, once you're happy with the topology, you're out of the woods basically with the face. This was the hardest part. So now we just have to fill in the rest of the face, and this is quite easy. So let's do that. So I was bumbling a little bit in this part, but the basic idea is that you just make sure that you have a change of direction. Kind of like if you think about the skull as a cube, where the corner of the cube would be, make sure you have a change of direction there. And then beyond that, just use grid fill, like just with the least amount of geometry, just fill in the surface, and then you can add edge loops to define the shape. This is not going to be visible anyway, so it doesn't really keep the loops light here. So another thing you'll see me do here that is a good idea is to take some of the edge loops that go from the face to the back of the head and actually dissolve some edge loops. Um, So this way we don't have all the detail that we needed in the face, in the back of the head where you can't even see it. This might be a little bit difficult to do at first, but once you get used to it, it's very simple. And I hope the video that I linked you will help you do it if you're new to this. And for the neck, just extrude down. Don't worry if it looks horrible. Just we're gonna fix it in sculpt mode. Don't worry. All right. So at this point, I think you should go over your model if you have been following a lot, and make some last changes to topology. See if you're happy with everything. Uh, you can still change things after this, but it's good to get things down early. I made a very slight change to the edge flow of the nose to have that line that goes from the cheek to the nostril. No big deal. Okay, and the other thing you want to do is at this point you want to add enough geometry so that you can actually like model the the shape of the face that you want. So that doesn't mean that you should add geometry willy-nilly. You should still keep things light. This is, I mean, I'm assuming that you want this model for animation like me. And keep in mind, we can always subdivide the model later if we want it to be smoother. So as long as we have proper topology, the model will retain its shape and things will be golden. So yeah, once you're happy with the geometry, let's hop on over to sculpt mode. By the way, you'll notice that I actually haven't talked about the ear yet. This is half intentional. I think it's easier if we do it last. It's in some cases it might even make sense to have it as a separate object. But yeah, we'll actually do it last once we have done the basic smoothing of the face. So yeah, regarding to this part, this is where your artistic skills are really going to be put to the test. So you want to like smooth the face. You want to push and pull verts to actually get the shape that you want. If you have a tablet, this is the time to use it. I do actually have a tablet, but for the purposes of this video, I will not be using it, just to show you that it can be done without a tablet. I don't know what I can really say. Like, I don't know what kind of character you're making, if you are making one. But try to match the vision you have for the character as best as you can for this low poly model. You can always adjust things later still. This is not the end of the line. So yeah, make sure you look at your model from every angle. Really get a feel for the shape of your model, like from different angles. Especially the 3/4 angle is really important to get right, because otherwise your model will look good from the front, but then once you rotate it even a little bit, it'll look like an eldritch abomination. You might see some weirdness around the middle. This is due to the mirror modifier. This is unfortunate, but it's a limitation of Blender. Don't worry about it too much. We can fix it later. Um, what else can I say? I recommend going into wireframe mode while you sculpt. This way you can see the vertices better. And yeah, just take your time, play with it. Look at it from different angles. Take a break, come back. That always helps with the artistic process to see things with a new pair of eyes. You might want to switch to rendered mode every now and then to maybe even put some materials on your mesh to see how it looks. So yeah, the last thing for this video is the ear. I don't really have a whole lot to tell you about the ear. To be frank, I'm not really an ear guy. I mostly just wing it when it comes to the ear. Sometimes I don't even model it in. But if you want to do it the same way as me, select these three faces, inset, extrude, and then it's basically just a matter of modeling in the geometry of the ear. I'm actually going to keep it really, really simple because I'm going to use textures to fake the geometry of the ear. I think this is probably the best way. But yeah, just make sure that the general shape of the ear is correct. Just like before, look for multiple angles. You can pop into sculpt mode to do some adjustments. Just play with it. And at the end of the day, I mean, the ear is not going to probably make or break your model, right? Like it's just a detail that no one really cares about. So anyhow, this is it for this video. My God, we've done it. We've made a face. Uh, I hope you followed along. I hope you found something useful. Maybe you were entertained. Whatever it was, I'm glad you joined me. And I'll see you next time when we model the hair for this character. Ooh, spooky. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'll try to answer them to the best of my abilities. And I'll see you next time.